everybody for joining. I'm Adam Berezin, co-founder of MSDW. I'm thrilled to have everybody here with us today. This is the MSDW Biz Apps Marketing Minutes podcast. And here is where we chat with marketing leaders in the Microsoft space, dive deep into the critical strategies that drive success for both ISVs and partners. Today's guest is Sam Bush, who's a Microsoft channel veteran, current partner marketing director for Netstock, and the host of the Ambush on Air podcast.
Yes.
Sam, welcome to Biz Apps Marketing Minutes.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me, Adam. I am excited. As a lot of you know, I just made the pivot to Netstock, and I couldn't be happier, really championing our partner marketing and getting that off the ground. So excited to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, no, we really appreciate it. So how'd you end up in the Microsoft space? What kind of, what made you get into marketing?
Okay, so I went to school for painting. If you guys listen to the podcast, you've heard the stories.
Yeah.
I graduated during the recession, the first one I've been involved in my life as a millennial, and graduated and decided that being a full-time artist and a bartender wasn't going to pay my bills, especially that college debt that kept knocking at the door. So randomly, I got a message on LinkedIn from a friend from college who was like, "Hey, I work at this marketing agency that's right down the street from your house. We're hiring a bunch of basically phone jockeys who tell people how to do SEO." And I'm like, "I don't even know what you're talking about." And she's like, "We just need people with a personality to come get on the phone with these people and basically read a script in the beginning, and then you'll get better at it and you'll move up and you'll do all these things." And I was like, that sounds really weird, but sure, I'll come in and interview. I get there. It's the typical advertising agency in the 2000s. There's everyone's in flip-flops and shorts, and it's literally 3 blocks from my house in a cool downtown building. And instantly I met the person who was going to be my boss, and I was like, "She seems cool. I'll do it." So I started a week later, not even really gave it too much thought. And I've never looked back. That was 15 years ago. In my time in marketing, I really have had a strong hold in content strategy. But demand generation and partnerships are also kind of where I find my kind of niche. And I think they all are so interconnected. But I've been in the Microsoft space for, I just calculated it because I always get it wrong, 8 years. I first actually interviewed with someone who worked at the agency with me as I was trying to transition out. I'd been there about 5.5 years. And if you've ever worked in a marketing agency as a marketer, you know that is a long time to be that exhausted, right? So at that point, I'd interviewed with a prior coworker, and it was a logistics company in the NetSuite and really just NetSuite at the time space, right? They'd built their whole business there, and I came in and wrote the entire website, over 100 customer stories in a year and a half.
Wow.
And just
that's a lot.
Power hour content for this business. It was exhausting, but so cool, because it was I got to hear the stories of how this solution helped their small business, and found a really cool experience in helping people through B2B SaaS, which is not often how you feel in it. Right.
Sure.
And then I quickly got immersed into it. I met someone who was my mentor until he retired, Bill Knapp, Associates in Velocio, former veteran who moved over to PageNet, where I was at the time. And I remember he took me and one of my coworkers who's still at PageNet now, Steve Karam, to one of our first Microsoft shows. And we had just did a go-to-market for Business Central, and we had a bunch of AX customers and GP. But he walked us into this party, and we're the youngest people by far. We don't know anyone, and everybody seems like they know each other. It's this big family reunion, right? We get there, and I'm like, "Oh God, this is weird. What are we supposed to do?" He looks at both of us, and he's like, "You'll be the last one here, and you'll shake hands with every single one of these people. Follow me around and I'll change your life." And I was like, "You're crazy." Now I'm like, "You changed my life and I'm crazy,"
Yeah.
So it started really naturally, and it's just been the safest, most fun, interesting community I've ever been a part of.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It definitely is a unique ecosystem for sure. I was in the SAP space prior to
Oh yeah.
starting
Night and day.
MSDW. Very different, very
Hmm.
different vibe, very different
Oh
vibe.
yeah.
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 And at
Um,
NetStock, I'm kind of in a bunch of ERPs, but
mm,
I am the Microsoft girl. Like
mhm.
you hire Sam when you're like, we need some Microsoft movement.
Yeah.
Come work here, right?
Yeah.
Just because of the speaking sessions and the connections and the friends and the family and all of that. So
Hmm. Yeah, I completely agree with that.
yeah.
And you mentioned that you specialize mainly in partner marketing,
Hmm.
and yeah, and that is, if anybody, if there's one thing in this space, it's that partners are a critical part um,
Yeah.
of how ISVs operate in this
Exactly.
ecosystem. Um, and I think something that I'd love for you to share is how you go about not just sort of performing the marketing director role that's partner focused, but how you go about actually building out a good partner marketing team behind
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. So a lot of I come from director of marketing roles, senior partner marketing manager, kind of all over the place. So I have had the privilege of building out a marketing team.
Hmm.
And I have a lot of opinions. I've talked about these in some podcasts of mine and then with friends. But I am a big proponent of if you are, a small VAR or a small ISV looking to hire maybe your first marketer or your second, your first marketer, you want to find someone who's like not fresh out of college, right out of their career, but maybe 5 years in, and they've got curiosity, hunger, and a craving for more, right?
Hmm.
You got to find someone who's generally curious and has some of the chops you need
Mm.
to get started. So I started in a way that I have found a lot of others started in get to the positions that I've been in, have all come from a content background, actually.
Mm. Oh,
Um,
interesting.
and I think a lot of that has to do with the evolution of how content strategy really started. In the 90s, it was like keyword stuffing and SEO
Mm.
blogs and all of that. But content now has become ingrained in every single part
Yeah.
of a piece of marketing anything, right? So if you can nail down how to speak to your audience and where to speak to them as a content strategist, you're already halfway through most of that strategic marketing stuff that a lot of other marketers don't know or don't have the affinity for yet. So I always say, like, your first marketer, hire a content background, hire a
Mm.
content bone with that curiosity and some of those leadership skills that you look for. Um,
Hmm.
and then I'm such a big fan of um, two different ways I've seen it done, and really um, pros and cons to both. I know a lot of teams in the VAR channel that I did some consulting and kind of my in between, and some of the VARs I worked with had demand generations specializing in each maybe product line. So one would be for
Mm.
Business Central, one would be for
Hmm.
F&O, right? And then you'd have kind of a shared services model where
Mm.
that would have, your graphic designer, your email marketer, your advertising specialist,
Hmm.
right? And they would really help you craft beyond the type one or the final mile messaging. They'd give you the rest, right?
Hmm.
And that's how I do most of my content as a whole. And really what I love about my position here at NetStock is I actually don't report to the marketing team here, which is totally new for me. I sit on the sales team
Hmm.
under the partnership team, but I'm
Interesting.
still a marketer. My title
Huh.
still has marketing in it.
Yeah.
But I get to use the agency who does all of our digital and all of our events really
Mm.
as an agency for me. So I
Hmm.
get to say, kind of in that same demand gen strategist model, that's like, here are the 10 things I need. Here's the quippy headline I'm looking to use. Here's
Hmm.
3 things I'm thinking about. And they get to go and be the marketers who make that dream a reality and evolve it, And I think that's how teams moving forward have to operate, because we're trying to do so much with so few people
Mm.
that you've
Yeah.
got to hire the right people to do those things. And I think
Hmm.
the teams I've seen most successful, you've got, a product line owner that runs the demand campaign, or a product marketer. I could be open to talking about that too, because I think that's a whole level of skill as well.
Sure.
And then under that, you have a shared services model that really helps bring that to life and elevate it. And you have your strategic thinkers thinking what's next and not thinking about the final line of the email copy, right? Because that's where you lose your strategic workers anyway.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
But most VARs in our space, and a lot of ISVs that I've met with recently, they're a single marketer team, and they're trying to think, what do I outsource and what do I keep to myself? And that, in the same vein, is like, you've got to be a content strategist for yourself. I never recommend people outsourcing content, and people look at me so crazy because some of my friends do that as a living. They do the outsourced content, right? But I'm like, no one knows your content better than you and your product team.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, if you don't know it, maybe let's think about, maybe that's just not your skill. Maybe that's it. But I think in most cases, a lot of building a team starts with content strategy and then finding those areas of strategic work versus I don't like the word execution because it makes it sound like, somebody could be like a 20 years into their career email marketer. They're not execution, right? But they're the one who does that specific niche.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
So that's how I rock.
Content outsourcing, it's an interesting subject. I kind of view it as two separate things. There's the content outsourcing, which is having like a professional team of writers, create the content, but that should be paired with the actual company and getting the product knowledge for them. Exactly. There's something so when you said like content outsourcing, I immediately thought of something called knowledge outsourcing, which is basically like saying to a content creator, you take this information, you go find the information and you write about it. It should really be, okay, I'm going to consult with you who are the product experts, and then I'll turn it into a professional editorial piece. And I think I think when companies just do the quote unquote knowledge outsourcing part, that is where I think they get into trouble because nobody knows your product and your company better than you. And you have to be the advocate for that during the content creation process, whether you're creating the content or not.
Exactly.
So no, I think that's interesting. And I also find it interesting to hear that, you know of a lot of VARs and ISVs, and you work with a lot of companies that have a very, very small marketing team, and it could be one or two people. It's funny. I've found that a lot of companies in this space do operate with a relatively small team. I guess it comes to a point where, how much should one person be doing? Yeah. I think that, because if you do more, then some could argue, well, then you're not really great at one specific thing. You're just good at many things, but you're not excelling at any one thing. So at what point, if you're like a one or two person marketing team, and I know you mentioned earlier that, you would hire a content person, which I totally agree with. What else do you need to do? Yeah. How do you grow that from sort of like the ground up almost? Because when you're a one or two person team, that's really where you are.
I want to pick on that a little bit, and then I'll tell you what I would do next. So one thing that a mentor has really ingrained in me and helped me become the marketer that I am is this concept that's, I think, from HubSpot in like the 80s or 90s. I'm pretty sure. But it's this concept of being a T marketer. So like the letter T. You are broad stroke. You know a little bit about a lot of stuff, but you have something you know the most about. You're an expert in one specific thing. And I think seeing that individual marketer in a team, if you can identify what that one thing is that you want to either specialize in or you are specialized in, then we need to maybe do some self-discovery and learn what actually drives your day. What do you enjoy doing? What are you getting accolades for? What's bringing in revenue that you're working on? And decide what that thing is that you want to lean into the most. But I think there's still something to be said about like, I had a CMO of a company I was at last call me the Sam of all trades because I've done a bunch of random stuff. But was it good to do all of those things in organizations? No. But did it teach me a ton? Absolutely.
I was going to say the experience, I'm sure, is key.
Exactly. But I was burnt out all the time. So going back to the like, how much is too much on some marketers in these lean teams, I think we as marketers and we as this generation of work from homers, we need to figure out how to be concise with our management on time spent, right? And I think that's something we're all still learning. Nobody tracks time in these spaces unless you're working on a client project, right? So there are some days that I feel like I'm in meetings 8 to 8, I'm just in meetings all day long. I do nothing. And then the next day, I don't want to get in and write an email campaign first thing in the morning. I'm exhausted, right? So what does balance look like now? What does your comfortability with the extent of work you're doing look like? I think those are all up for discussion now. And something that even a girl I mentor, she's like, if I get the work done that takes somebody else 10 hours and it only takes me 2, how do I communicate that? And I'm like, don't. Like, baby, don't. Like, you're burning it out because you know what you're doing in your high volume, but you're paid the same as the girl next to you who's taken 10 hours. So like, you've got to figure out, is the risk and the reward and the work all equal? That's a whole tangent I could go down that. I'm honestly, I probably should pivot back to your question. Which is, okay, you asked, after I hire content, what am I doing?
And let me interject really quickly.
Okay.
One thing that immediately comes to mind about hiring more people is being able to participate in more marketing vehicles. Because if you're a 1 or 2 person marketing department, you might hyper focus on one specific channel, whether it's trade shows, whether it's doing stuff with us or whatever. But you're limited as far as how much you can expand your horizon because it's just you and you don't want to get spread too thin. So I feel like opportunities are missed by not having more people.
I think when it comes to building a team, I am not a proponent of hiring a bunch of interns, and I'm not a proponent of hiring when the team is small and I'm trying to grow. I'm not going to hire a specialist second, because all they're going to be able to do is help me implement a bunch of things, at least at face value. Some of them way better. I've had an intern that went full time with me right after because she was amazing, right? So there are instances, but typically my next hire is going to be someone who is, again, I'm always looking for curious people who are hungry, right? So I've got my content person. I've got myself who's thinking strategic. How do we put people where? How do we put things in the right places? And then in my time in ISV, director of marketing roles, my next thing was, do I need a partner marketing manager or a product marketing manager at this time? I think people in this space often think the content marketer is also the product marketer. I think depends on your product. So like, for example, I worked at a company that was a TMS and a shipping software. Those are very specific and different solutions. That TMS had so much depth to what it could do that no matter what that content strategist would put together, they don't understand the product depth, right? You need a product marketer to go in and say, I have a product background, but I also can write, or I can build a messaging matrix to say, this is how you talk to the shipping manager versus the IT lead, right?
So it's more, it's persona focused.
Exactly.
Buyer persona focused.
Or if we're looking to maybe launch, like my time at PayShare, we were looking to launch Acumatica and Microsoft at the same time. And I'm like, I'm going to take those on because that is an area of strength for me. So what gaps do I have that now I don't have time for that I need to fill? So I hired marketing ops and a reporting, basically wizard, to come in and do all of that because I now had that time that I was spending doing board reporting and monthly reporting and weekly sales reports and all of that. I had to pivot that to doing go-to-market for new ERPs. But I knew
strategy
exactly
focused.
But I knew hiring someone who didn't already work at the company, who didn't already know the depth of the content that I already wrote and the product that I already learned and could demo, they couldn't go in and hit the ground running on launching the Microsoft BC integration to the public, right?
Yeah.
They'd have ramp up time. Whereas if I hire somebody who's focused in the CRM and, D365 and all of that, and they know that like the back of their hand, they can come in and hit the ground running there. So I think there's like some interesting like pushes and pulls. I don't think there's one size that fits all on how to scale an organization. I think it really comes down to like how you start and then identifying areas where you can kind of roll things off that make sense. And in my experience, it has been really cool because I've been able to really create my own job 3 different times now in organizations by kind of starting as that T person that's like, I have this depth in this and I know all these others. So let me come in and do all of these things until we figure out maybe we've got headcount because, the demand plan really worked out, or we brought on 50 new partners this year and got, pipeline of X. So now we can hire, right? But I think that's how I kind of view it.
That's pretty cool. I like that. So as far as focusing on just sort of the partner marketing aspect, what's the best way to actually build out that partner marketing team?
Yeah. I've seen it a couple of different times. And then Don Martin is my boss here at NetStock. And we've really talked about, it's not going to be today that we're building out this team, right? I'm the first kind of start in North America to take it on here. And then what does that look like a year from now? And the way I've seen it best, I've seen a couple of different, so open to anybody in the comments telling me they like their way better, because I'd love to chat. But I have always seen a partner marketing manager who owns either a region or owns a specific like ERP or line of business. So in my case at NetStock, what I'll probably do and what I think makes the most sense for us is I will probably hire a junior who owns North America that does all of our VAR partnerships, and I'll keep all of our strategic and all of our ERPs, right? The ones that have the deeper relationship, that are more consistently going back and forth with us, who we already have a rhythm with, I have a relationship with, right? Because some of these ERPs I've known for 8 years, and I get on a call with some of them and they're like, oh my God, you're back, So I'm like, keeping that with me makes the most sense for the business strategically.
Yeah.
But I also want to bring in someone who can grow into that one day, because I'm not going to be in this role forever, right? So bringing somebody in that's in region, that is like already has some partner marketing experience. I don't really care about industry specific in Microsoft. I know that's maybe controversial. I don't need to have someone who's a partner marketer in like supply chain, for example. I think the niche is kind of irrelevant when it comes to some of the skills, right? And some of the relationships, like all of our VAR partners in the ecosystem are so widely spanned that you probably know ones I don't know, and I know ones you don't know. And there's so much area of opportunity and growth with that, that I think that's how we plan to do it. And then my time at Flowcast was a little bit different. So I owned all of our technology partners. So that was just ERP and ISV partnerships. And then we had someone else who owned consulting partners and what is it called? Private equity. So they owned that completely separate of me. And I just had kind of every technology partner, and she had every consulting and PE. And that worked for us for a while. They are definitely scaling a lot of that, and they're doing some cool things there at Flowcast. But so I've seen it kind of both ways, but my plan is region based, and that kind of sits in line with how NetStock operates.
Okay. That's interesting. I do know of a lot of ISVs that have a regional approach. Although, there aren't as many as one would think.
No.
And I don't understand, because I agree with you. I think from a partner marketing perspective, that is a phenomenal strategy and approach, and it should be implemented by any ISV that has a partner focus.
I mean, you think about it. If I'm like NetStock, before I started, their partner marketing contact and event contact, she's based in South Africa.
Mhm.
So when they needed something on the fly, say you get to a trade show and your table doesn't deliver, or say you like need to print something last minute, even though those aren't all that partner marketers do, right? But those are things that I'm like, if I'm not in region and not in remotely the time zone, I can't help you with any of that.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and I can't speak the language. That's another thing for us too, because we are South Africa, APAC, EMEA, the DACH region, we're everywhere. Right. And I'm like, I don't know what these, like the time zones to meet for meetings, right? All that stuff comes into account when you're building and scaling a part of a global business.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And how do you find sort of the best vehicles to market through partners? What strategies have you found work the best? I mean, I know from a networking perspective, events are always good. And I feel like you need to treat events with partners differently than you would sort of marketing to them digitally.
Yep.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So I'm in the process of building out a bunch of our partner marketing campaigns now. So one thing that I always in the Microsoft channel specifically is directions is the best day of your life as a partner team, right? This is like the show that you look forward to every single year because that's where you do all your work, right? So how do I plan that in a way to actually have intelligent conversations with my partners instead of just a tequila soda at the party, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Because we're all there. We're all partners. We're all trying to have a good time. We're all trying to catch up, but there's still only a couple of times that we're all in the same room, right? So something that I've implemented in multiple roles, and I actually am doing a session at partner marketing event, which I just found out today that's approved on event strategy for marketers to make sure they're aligned with sales and everybody. And that is, I make everybody sign like on a call recorded. You have to say you agree to the goals listed for the show. And one of those goals is meeting scheduled. And in it, I have a whole deck in a PowerPoint and then an Excel sheet that you have to write what meetings you are committed to. And at the end of every day of that show, I make everybody spend 15 minutes standing around the kiosk or the booth or whatever. And I will run through that list and say, did you meet with him today? How'd it go? Did you meet with him today? How'd it go? And people are like, this is like so much. But I'm like, you're so expensive to send here. And you're here for a job, not for fun. And I think that's really transitioned the game for a lot of the way I've gotten revenue out of events. Right. And that applies also to partner events, right? Because partners, we are so inundated with digital content just in life in general. But then you have to think VARs, they have over 5,000 sometimes ISV partners. How many of them are trying to do a webinar with them? How many of them are sending them a white paper? How do you flood the noise digitally when there's so much already going? So something that I'm doing and something that I really love seeing in the marketplace too, and is I am all about like disruptive activities. So like I'm going to do a video live in the middle of the floor and I'm going to ask you a question that you're walking by and I'm going to ask you something. I'm going to do mainly video content to make it a little bit stick out. Or like when I first signed on to Netstock, we sent an email, which was a video of me just being like, hey, I'm Sam Bush. You may know me, you may not, but like follow along for the cool stuff we're about to do. And oh, by the way, looking for some new partners. Put it out on social, put it out on just email and exchange. But again, it breaks the noise of the stuff everybody else is sending, which is a newsletter that's here's where we'll be and here's 2 releases and all of that. So.
I think it's very easy for marketers and salespeople to fall into this trap, and that is making it about themselves and their organization. The successful partner and product marketers that I've seen in this space, they make everything about the customer and everything about the partner. So I think it's finding ways to, as you said, kind of break through all that noise and the information overload, whether it's through events or digitally or whatever,
Yeah.
by personalizing it to, the specific partner or partners or users, and making it all about, their problems and
Exactly.
trying to, present viable solutions to them for whatever they're going through.
Exactly.
Because, I mean, ISVs, they don't have it easy when it comes to working with partners, because I mean, you just said it yourself. Some VARs have thousands of ISVs that they work with, and even in this space, they might not have as many, but they have preferred ISVs. So if you're a new company that comes into this space, it's very, very difficult for you to not only navigate the partner landscape, but make any inroads, any traction at all.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I love to hear how you try, new and cool and creative ways to do that, because I think now, COVID had a lot to do with sort of the information overload. And I think that,
Oh my gosh.
and that was a negative thing to a degree, but I think it's sort of, what has birthed from that is the need for a lot more marketing innovation and creativity, especially in a niche marketplace like the Microsoft Biz Apps space. So yeah, I think that's good advice for all marketers, partners, or otherwise.
Yeah. I had a call.
Get the creative juices rolling.
Exactly. I had a call with my partner team yesterday, and I was like, here are 2 easy pieces of content that we don't have that we need in order to do this better. And one of them is literally just a piece of paper with all of the questions or words that partners should listen for when it comes to, qualifying for us or discovering for us, at least. I think a lot of times we get so used to the rhythm of just send them a battle card with a couple things on it, right? But what we're missing is, like, how do we influence and have them understand the human conversation they're having with the person, and not looking at a sheet that's like, our TAM is this and our ICP is that, and here are the 5 questions to ask them. Like, we need to educate them on the conversations that their customers are coming to them on, instead of educating them on how we would converse, right?
Sure.
So I think that's like a flip the script kind of mindset that I'm like, why aren't we all doing that?
Yeah. And how important how important is it to bring partners opportunities?
Oh my gosh, if you don't bring them opportunities, then they don't want to talk to you. But it's hard to do, right? Really hard to do, because a lot of times in at least the way that NetStock is set up, most of our business is sold through partners. We've got a great digital team and a great digital footprint, and we do a great amount of business inbound. Those inbound ones are the only ones we could potentially ask, who's your partner, who's whatever. But oftentimes they already have one picked, and they're coming to us after they've talked to a partner.
Okay.
So for us, it's difficult. In other spaces, when I was at Flowcast, for example, a lot of that was you could buy the solution with any ERP, so it didn't matter who your partner was. And we didn't really track VARs. So I think it's kind of all over the place. And I think that's the discussion that happens at every Directions and at every community summit. There's always a session that a bunch of people put on that's, what to expect as an ISV from a VAR and vice versa. And I think we still haven't figured it out.
Yeah, I don't think so.
And I think this is a conversation that's been going on for 40 years, but I think we're still not sure. And I think that also speaks to this evolution that needs to happen. Like, how do we revitalize this whole concept of partner programs?
Sure. Yeah, it is tricky, because if you think of the priorities of a partner, it's it's upgrading or migrating their existing clients, getting new deals, selling their own, consulting services or their own IP that they've developed. And then if they can't fill a gap, working with an ISV. So it's all about, getting higher up on their priority list, which is difficult because they have a business to run too. And ISVs, I feel like ISVs are more dependent on partners, and partners are on ISVs. Yeah. Wh-
100%.
Which, which is always, I guess it's not too surprising, but you
Mhm.
would think that given the fact that there are so many good ISVs out there with so many solutions and so many different
Yeah.
specialties that, especially for closing new business, where
Yeah.
there might Business Central might need some enhancement or whatever, that they would automatically bring in ISVs to deals. And I know some of them do, but
Yeah.
not as many as you would think. They typically wait until after the
Yes.
deal is closed and then go through all the stuff, which doesn't help the ISV, especially if they've already made a considerable investment,
Yes.
migrating to a new platform or upgrading or implementing a brand new
Yeah.
system, to then
And
have
just
to go and say,
do it all
hey,
again.
can you spend more money and go through another implementation process? So yeah, there
Yeah.
has to be some solution here.
I
Um,
agree. I agree. And
that
I
I
think
Yeah.
there are some tools that I might like shamelessly plug one that I think is amazing, and that's CR365 has a really cool tool.
Mhm.
I think I forget the name of that one specifically, but the one
Guide
Guide
365. Yeah.
365, that's what it
Yeah.
is. And I'm like, why aren't more people woke to this? Because it
Mhm.
literally prepares the VAR to see NetStock is the best fit for this, right? Or an option
Sure.
if they
Yeah.
haven't heard of us, or if they had. Like, we've got to start thinking about how to be top of mind or become front of mind to a partner who knows us or has never heard of us. So,
Mhm.
how many ways can we be top of mind without always doing the same thing, right? We don't always need to send the email campaign to remind them of the thing, right? So,
Mhm.
I think that's something I've been looking at, kind of our footprint and like what programs we're engaged in and how
Mm.
we can leverage those better, because we're listed everywhere, but I don't know that we're doing our due diligence on upkeeping and using things like
Sure.
MSDW, for example, and
Mhm.
some of the services you guys offer, and how we can again break the mold of the norm that we've been doing.
Yeah. Yeah. So where do you think the future of partner marketing in this space is headed?
Mm,
Because I know we've covered quite a bit. So.
okay, I about a year ago was talking to Anya, and I told her I don't think the job that I want exists. And it was the funniest conversation, because now I'm in the job that I didn't think existed, but we're making it. And that is, I think partner marketing is just as much business development as it is marketing.
Mm.
I think you cannot be a partner marketer and spend your whole day behind a desk writing campaigns.
Mhm.
You're not a partnership person. You're a marketer who helps the partner team. And I
Yeah.
think there's very specific differences. And I know a lot of partner marketers who are like that, who are amazing, right? But where is the difference between the ones who also can nurture and cultivate the relationship, who also understand the ERP, who also understand the nuances of both sides of the conversation, and
Mhm.
know the depth of that content that's going out and the buying behavior and all of that? Like, there's a depth to it that I think
Mm.
is evolving. I think we're all kind of learning and growing into that. So I think the future of partnerships is going to look different. I think you're going to have channel managers that lean a little more marketing than they do in that sales function. Um,
Mhm.
I've seen an evolution in the last like 5 years of channel managers who used to just be sitting on deals where a partner was brought in and it's their partner. So
Mm.
they're sitting on a demo, and I'm like, why are you wasting your time sitting on a
Yeah.
demo? Because TriBridge brought you a deal. You don't need
Mhm.
to sit on that. Let them run with it in the sales rep. So even that's already started to evolve, where we're dropping a lot of that. And I think if you're not, you should be. You're wasting your
Mm.
channel reps time.
Mhm.
But I think it's going to pivot, and it's going to be more focused on partner engagement, partner recruitment, and partner experience more than it is marketing. And I think
So,
that's the future that I see, and the one that I'm
yeah.
trying to build.
So kind of blurring the lines between marketing and sales and
Yeah,
almost creating a hybrid.
exactly.
Interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it's like, as a traditional marketer, have all those skills to go do all those things.
Mhm.
But as I look at the person I am, the behaviors I'm best at, the activities I feel like are needed to, again, break the mold of the normal partner marketing function. Some of that stuff sits outside of the traditional, I report to a CMO and my KPIs are open rates and pipeline, right? And like now my KPIs are pipeline and close one and SQLs and SQOs. And how do I bring more of those from partners? But then another one of my KPIs is new partners signed, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, that can't sit in a marketing role because of some of those KPIs, because you don't influence them, right? You can't pay somebody on something they can't influence, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right? In my opinion, I've seen it differently in some places, which is
yeah.
That's kind of what I think is the evolution. It's going to evolve into a more hybrid of a business development sort of function with the marketing knowledge to move that stuff forward. And that shared services model is all how it's going to happen.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. And I'll kind of add my 2 cents to that too. I view I view it as, I guess you can call it the entrepreneurial marketer.
Yes.
Where what we were talking about earlier, innovation, creativity, marketing, sales, kind of all sort of have to mesh together. And then there's sort of taking kind of the calculated marketing risks, like an entrepreneur does.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think I kind of view it as sort of all of this kind of lump sum of everything. So it's almost like, I get, it's not really wearing multiple hats, but it's like it's combined sort of into a single all-encompassing role.
Yeah, that's totally what I think. And that's a big reason why I launched my podcast and my consulting brand. I was like, these are not mutually exclusive anymore. They are like, we cannot keep doing marketing in this channel the way we've been doing it for 100 years.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I have so many people that are, because of maybe fear or knowledge or what have you. And I'm like, I created this podcast to basically be like, if you're afraid, come listen to me talk about it and try it. I give you all the tips to do it. Because I feel like there needs to be that evolution, that resurgence of innovation. So I used all the buzzwords there.
Yeah.
All of them.
No, that was awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining the show today. This was such an awesome conversation. I learned a ton about partner marketing, how to build up a marketing team and the things that partner marketers should be doing. So that's awesome. I really appreciate it.
I had a blast too. This was a fun topic. I always love talking scaling and innovation. So always down, and I appreciate the time.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah. Bye, guys.